So I think we'll get started now. This is Andrew Benny. I'm the product director at Springer Publishing Company in New York City. We're happy to have you again today, just continuing our 2019 webinar series with another great subject on how to recruit top nursing grads. If you don't know about Springer, we are a nursing publisher, and we're interested in not only providing the highest quality of content, but we're committed to advancing careers in nursing. So we have two job boards in Daily Nurse and Minority Nurse, and we act as an excellent resource at all levels. Recently, we partnered with a great talent marketing company called Acadiate. We have the co-founders with us today, David Murdoch and Zane Westmoreland. And Acadiate is a talent marketing platform, so they basically help candidates promote themselves as to employers, admission teams. Acadiate spent the last 9 years researching how talent is assessed and how it can be effectively marketed by candidates. And today we'll be sharing some great insights with you. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to them. Please feel free to ask questions within the chat, and we'll answer them as we go throughout the webinar. So I'll hand it over to you guys.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Andrew. This is David Murdoch. Just to reiterate, we are a talent marketing platform for new graduates. We're actually used in a number of universities and programs as an experiential learning tool to help students to learn how to market themselves and really to go beyond the resume. So we try to demystify it in the hiring process and really help out as much as student nurses, but also schools, and really tie them up with recruiters. And we've had thousands of students go through the platform and really help them adapt to the market. In this webinar, focused on how to, for recruiters and how to help them best find new graduate nurses. The structure of the webinar is going to be around 4 core areas. First, we'll talk about the unique challenges for nursing grads and for recruiters hiring them, but also talk about the constant dilemma between quantity and quality for both the student, but also for recruiters. So we're going to talk through the conundrum and the trade-offs between quantity and quality. Third, we will look at new graduate job applications, how they look, and explain some of the shortcomings that often are in them. And then lastly, provide some discussions around getting better applications and how to improve the quality of the applications you receive, and ultimately, with that higher quality, drive better quality hires. We're hoping that this is thought-provoking. We'll have also through the presentation, we're going to actually trying to make it a little bit more lively. We're going to have a few polls in there, which we'll share with you, asking questions of the audience and getting your feedback. And then at the end, we're actually going to have a special offer for participants with an $850 value from Springer. So stick around. I think you'll find it quite interesting. So next, the unique challenges for new grads and for new grad recruiters. You know, one of the key things, defining aspects of the nursing market in general, is the time to hire is dramatically higher for healthcare and for nurses than in other industries. In fact, the average time to hire in the US is 28 days. In the healthcare industry, it's around 48 days. And I've seen estimates for nursing as high as 129 days. So this is one of the biggest challenges that as recruiters, I'm sure you're very conscious of. And this is driven by as much as local market imbalances, but also scarcity of supply. The baby boomer retirement pressures, where I've seen as high as 1,000 nurses are retiring every day in the US. But also the drive for greater specializations and the need for more unique specialized applications, backgrounds of nurses for particular fields. And third, bottlenecks in the nursing programs. There is a challenge overall in academia in training nurses and graduating nurses through the system, which is being restricted by the availability of instructors. And then lastly, geographic imbalances, where from our discussions with recruiters, where in some states like Alabama, there's greater supplies versus, let's say, going to Wisconsin, where there is major scarcity of supply. So there's a lot of geographic differences in the market. One of the observations that we have is also part of the challenges is the level of due diligence and verification that's required in the healthcare and nursing market. As much as a recruiter, you need to be evaluating individuals for fit within the organization, fit within the team, and with the particular reporting manager. You also have to do a lot more due diligence for these professions over other professions, just because the consequences can be so dire. And as the feedback, that one of the biggest challenges that we get as feedback from recruiters is the general skepticism of applications. We've seen stats out there from recruiters indicating that 80% of the applications are somewhat misleading or have outright lies in it. So you have to do a lot more due diligence and verification. In fact, talking to one nursing recruiter who told us that in the hiring of new graduates, they try and get as quickly to a conversation with the precept, not putting a lot of value in the resume, the job application, or even the interview. So major challenge in the recruiting space. And then one of the observations we have, and this is more so with nursing grads, we see it a lot among graduates, but particular to nursing grads, is they're challenged with as effective what we call self-promoters, or being able to properly articulate how well their skill sets and their background lines up with the institutional organization or the particular job that they're applying to. That there's a tendency for boilerplate job applications that aren't really focused on promoting their skills. They're very matter of fact. And this is part of the challenge in academic environment. In school support is primarily focused on the resume and often doesn't go beyond the resume. And actually, I just wanted to stop there and ask and just poll the audience, asking you the question, as a recruiter, what are your biggest challenges in hiring new graduate nurses? We have a list of some items that you might find as might align with some of the challenges you see. We're just curious what you might see as your challenges. Just if you can answer that, and then we'll try and summarize it and compile it and share it back with the audience. And the feedback we have is often identified as limited candidates or differentiation, poorly prepared candidates for interviews, background checks and verifying talents is very challenging. Lack of sufficient candidate pools, candidates who don't fit into your institutional culture, or the trade-off between experience and education, where you feel you might have to compromise on experience if they're stronger on education. So this is interesting, that the feedback. So that's good feedback. We're trying to get the interesting thing for us as a platform within the education spaces that we're exposed across many different fields of study. So it's good to get feedback of how the different industries and fields of study and career areas compare. One of the other aspects that we get feedback on from recruiters is the top attributes that they evaluate or key that they look for in recruiting is difficult to see in the job applications because of the simplicity of them, where the typical attributes they're looking for, top ones that we're hearing is decision making, compassion, adaptability, just because of the nature of the nursing profession. One of the most challenging professions out there, where the day-to-day routine is often very different as they go through, and there's a lot of stresses between technical challenges, but emotionally managing that. So actually, just interested in taking another poll of our audience around what are the top attributes that you typically look for. Just asking for the top ones. You know, what would you describe as the what you would be looking for? And be interesting just to give feedback to the audience. We just find it's a little bit more interesting to get this feedback. You know, the other challenging aspects of attributes is that, you know, for early career nurses, it's often the emphasis on bedside mannerisms versus later career is leadership. That's always the challenge for recruiters is, as you're looking for more senior individuals, that you're looking for, it's usually shifting what you're looking for. So let's have a look at it. Actually pretty spread across. So, and I suspect that a lot of our audience is looking for typically focused on nurses where leadership is the lower priority. So that's very interesting feedback. Kind of aligns with our experience as well. So next, and one of the things to understand about Acadia and what we see is that the quality of applications that really show these attributes that are very difficult to see in applications. As you talk to and see structurally how graduate nurses are developed within academia, the focus is primarily on access to opportunities and less so on quality of applications. Next, where as from our perspective, this is a little bit of how we're a little bit different from a lot of the other applications out there that students are exposed to, that we're focused on improving the quality of the applications. And this is the beauty of us working with Springer. Springer has one of the largest databases and the best access to nurses in the nursing industry in the US, tying with Acadia, where our focus is on improving the quality of those applications. Next. So, you know, why is this poor quality in new graduate nurses? Well, for starters, they typically have similar backgrounds coming out of bachelor programs or other structured programs. Their education experience of new grads tend to be highly interchangeable. There's not a lot of differentiation between them. But also there's a similar preparation. Educators provide students with resources and support that's really just focused on resume cover letters, interviewing and access to job opportunities, and less so about digging deeper as to how they can differentiate themselves and understand how to express better to recruiters what they offer, and particularly about their personalities and those inner skill sets that often recruiters have to look for interviews to to pull out. In fact, you know, one of the biggest mistakes and one of the things that we push new grads to move away from, but there's a tendency, and this is across all of them, is they're really unsure what the recruiter is looking for, so they just throw everything at them. And one of the key things and one of the messages we have for them is to really understand what the recruiter wants and to focus on that. And that's the best way to help recruiters see their special skills and see what's special about them. And that's why we often see a pray and spray type of approach in this industry, having one resume and apply to all applications with that resume. With very small modifications. And accordingly, the results are typically mediocre in regards to results. And so we try to impress upon them to be really thinking how to target their background to particular employers and really understand what they're looking for. So what does this mean for recruiters next? Is that typically what you're seeing is boilerplate applications. They all look the same. It's difficult to ascertain qualifications, difficult to gauge interest and passion in the job and the organization, and inability to see key attributes, as we talked about before, and this is actually one of the common themes that we see working on the side with students is high potential hires are inadvertently screened out, where in the hiring process, we see a lot of false negatives at the interview stage. And this is one of the, you know, what we see as one of the tragedies out there, because as we work with students, in fact, actually one of the larger groups that we work with and go through Acadia are returning alumni who have struggled in the application process and are coming back to the school looking for advice and assistance. And we help them to slow down and understand what it truly means to market your talents and what recruiters are looking for. We've actually had presentations in the classroom with recruiters, and we often say, you know, you have to understand, put yourself in the shoes of a recruiter, that what they're, they don't have a lot of time. They have to often review initial applications, only receive 10 to 15 seconds. You have to grab their attention in a very short period of time. So you need to learn how to better present who you are to them very quickly. And often as students are advised in this way, that we see dramatic results. And this is good for the industry, where we typically see weak candidates move up strongly into the average category, and the average move into stronger. And through our process, that we can generate much stronger candidates than what the other processes and platforms out there for new graduates. So actually, I just wanted to take another poll at this stage, just to try and gauge the feedback from the individuals in this. And how would you rate the average nursing graduate job application from 1 to 10? In the typical applications you receive, or average one, which would be the average rating? Be just curious to get your feedback. So this would be for typically graduates, not necessarily experienced nurses, but you know, for a lot of you, it might also apply to experienced nurses as well. It's just interesting to get your feedback in particular to nurses versus our experience in our surveys of recruiters in regards to generally for new graduates. Okay, so that's interesting. So that's good. So it seems to be about maybe between 3 and 5 is the average that you're typically seeing from this group. So next.
Okay, so my name is Ian Westmoreland. I'm another co-founder at Acadia working with David. And one of the things that we have the privilege of doing is really, as David mentioned, work very closely with the student and the student demographic around applying to jobs and their role in the job market. And one of the things we've seen from them is if they're able to provide better information to recruiters, recruiters are able to make better decisions around that. So we really feel that recruiting the best new graduate nurses begins with getting better information from new grad nurses. And we'll dive into the job application process that a lot of new grads are going through now, and why we feel that information is really the key to helping uncover who could be the best fit for your organization. The typical new grad job application for most employers today, they try to keep things to a minimum, which is resume and cover letter. And this is done on purpose to encourage more applications. Within the industry, you know, it's better to capture the application than to lose them entirely. But what we've seen with this approach is that it's a double-edged sword, because on the other side of it, it also gives you information, especially for the new grad demographic, that is difficult to make hiring decisions around. So for experienced roles, this approach is effective because the resume can show proven past success in the role. However, for new graduates, they're typically hired based on potential, not on proven track records. And potential is something that is typically abstract and difficult to define. And therefore, applicants and students actually find it very difficult to articulate clearly on a resume. So I've got a poll I'd also like to put up here about new graduates in general. And if you've ever received any sort of video introduction or use of video technology in an application voluntarily from a candidate. And we asked this question because it helps us understand your applicants a little bit better. If they are, pushing the boundaries in marketing, we know that video is an emerging technology, and recruiters have told us that have received it is that it is an incredible way to assess talent. In many ways, de-risking the interview process by getting a lot of the communication attributes up front. So it's interesting that 100% replied that they'd never received this. And we'll go through a little bit more about the benefits of things like video and other documents or other resources that students can provide, and show how that can help you see a lot of the attributes that lead to the best possible hires for nurses. The typical applications we've seen from most recruiters and most employers typically focuses on 3 areas, which is education, experience, and qualifications. And these are the things that resumes do an incredible job of capturing. As David was mentioning earlier, the problem with that is that for the new grad demographic, education, experience, and qualifications tends to be the areas that are the most similar between them. The applications do not typically capture things like personality, compassion and empathy, adaptability, the work drive or the work ethic of the individual, evidence of their education and skills, visible work examples, third-party references, or passion for the role. And we've spoken to a lot of recruiters, and when we ask them between these 2 categories where their decisions are typically made on candidates, it tends to be in the latter. And unfortunately, a lot of these things, these attributes don't come out until the interview stage. So what ends up happening is based on a resume only screening, you end up taking a lot of candidates out of the pool that actually would excel in these other areas. So in working with students very carefully, we're able to see that if we help them bring more of the elements that don't typically go into an application, they're able to go from a 3 out of 10 as rated by surveyed recruiters up to an 8.3 out of 10 on average. And that isn't by changing any of their education or experiences. All it is in including more information about that candidate. And we feel that right now, many recruiters are kind of operating somewhat in the dark. They have a good idea of what the candidate is, but they're not as clear as they can be. And that's a lot of where the work we're doing with students comes into play. And what that looks like on our side is having the resume and cover letter, but also giving them the opportunity to back up their resume and cover letter with with evidence. So if a student says they're an excellent communicator, as I'm sure you know, every candidate likes to claim they are, provide proof of that. You can take a video of yourself introducing yourself for 30 seconds. It doesn't take a long time, but you can instantly communicate that skill set and evidence of that skill set. If you say you're an excellent writer, share an assignment that you did at school. If you graduated from a top tier program, give the recruiter access to where they can learn more about that program. So these are great ways that students can help you provide additional information that can really help you make better decisions around them. So as I mentioned, we've worked with thousands of students at this point around talent marketing. And very specifically, what we are noticing is that new graduates in general are poor marketers of talent. And what that means is we can work with an individual that is struggling to get interviews, jobs, and we change nothing except the way they are marketing themselves, and they start getting jobs and they start getting interviews and they get hired. So what we're seeing is this means that new graduates who present themselves better may not actually be better candidates. And this is something that's very interesting for us as a thought-provoking point around the resume and cover letter, and to communicate this point to recruiters to see, is the way we're assessing talent today really leading us to the best possible hires that we can be making for the organization. We're also seeing that the perception of candidates actually becomes far more accurate with additional evidence. So as I mentioned earlier, if there's a lot of cliches that are going around on resumes, everyone is punctual, everyone is hardworking, everyone has attention to detail. I'm sure you've seen these on the resumes you receive. It's easy to say those things. It's actually much more difficult to prove them out. And we see that when candidates are able to prove them out, they're actually far more accurate of that candidate. So for example, if they do include a video cover letter, or a video introduction showcasing their communication skills. For the recruiter, you don't have to take them at their word. You can now see visible evidence of that communication skill. If they said that they are an excellent communicator or they're excellent at work ethic and drive, and they get a reference letter from someone respected within the field or a professor that echoes that statement, it gives you another point of data where you can make better decisions around that particular skill set. The other thing we've learned is that recruiters can ask for better information, and a segment of the candidates will actually provide it. So as I was saying earlier, the hesitation for most recruiters in asking for more information from candidates is they don't want the attrition that comes with that. They believe it is better to receive the applicant than to not. But what we've seen is that you can still ask them for the minimum, but you can also ask and tell them if they want to go above and beyond, we will also review these additional items if you're willing to provide them. What that does for you is it clarifies who wants a job versus who wants your job. And as David was saying, there is a spray and a pray approach right now to job applications from new grads, where they are applying to 15, 20, 30 jobs a day using the exact same resume cover letter combination or something very similar. Asking a candidate for more helps you immediately identify someone that's taken a step back, saw your job, and felt that it was worthwhile enough to put in additional effort to really stand out to you and to your job. And that shows you an individual that is willing to actually go above and beyond if given the opportunity. And what we see is typically 10 to 20% of candidates will push themselves to do these extra things to get your additional attention. And this is a great way to actually see and screen candidates just by seeing who's willing to put an additional effort into the application process. So we do have another poll here that we'd love to ask, which is which most applies to your recruiting process. Is your recruiting process exactly what you're looking for and you don't want to change anything? Is it giving you good candidates but you want to tweak it to get better? Or is it not giving you the results you want and you want to try new strategies? So as you filled it out, we always like to see new tactics and new ways that recruiters are enlisting different technologies Whether it's behavioral-based technologies through question and answer, video-based technologies, video recruiting. We find it actually very fascinating to see the way the recruitment market is moving, especially in regards to new graduates, as we've mentioned, because the resume typically doesn't give an adequate or an accurate depiction of who the candidate actually is. Okay, so the overwhelming majority is saying that they're getting good candidates, but they would like to tweak it to get better or to improve. So thank you everyone for answering that poll. The next thing that is, what can you do? And we truly believe students right now today, after speaking to so many of them, they're graduating. They're all very nervous about the transition from becoming a student to becoming a professional, and they want greater clarity on what is expected to win the job, and they want employers to tell them, just tell me what I need to do, and I will give it to you, or I will provide it to you. So for these individuals, we believe that you want to give candidates the opportunity to go above and beyond. And what this means to create an avenue for individuals to provide evidence of their skills. You want to know who is willing to do more, and that in itself is actually a very valuable screening tool that helps you see work ethic and drive and the willingness to do more to stand out. You also want to get better information about candidates, which is validation of education and experiences. And that also ties back to what David was mentioning as well with the nursing profession about how much due diligence there is and how much verification. And the more of that you get up front, helps you de-risk that later on in the journey, where if an individual is able to prove out their education, you don't have to go through all those interviewing rounds only to find out maybe they weren't as honest as they said they were, or it wasn't presented as accurately as it could have been. You also want to get insights into personality and the other attributes you were talking about. Those are the areas that we see are highly differentiators for new grads, especially nurses, but where recruiters have very little insight into. So typically the way this is done, or a lot of recruiters who have tied into this and realize they need better information, is they will go to sites like LinkedIn, and they'll look for profiles, or they'll look for candidates with websites. But as we know in the nursing profession, a lot of nurses don't have that sort of information set up currently. The other problem with those sorts of approaches is they tend to be very generic, and they lack context for your company. It doesn't ask the candidate how they would fit in with your specific role, and I'll give them the opportunity to really tell their story for your unique needs as a recruiter. So what we've done with Acadiate and in working with a lot of the students that we work with is we do give them an ability where they can easily show you a lot more deeper information about themselves. It's an evidence-based approach, and the idea here is if you say it on your resume and you can prove it, then you should make that accessible to the recruiter. It's accessible via a live link that can be included in any job application. It's job specific and private, so that's actually a great thing for you as a recruiter, because when it's private, the student feels that they can share with you items that they probably wouldn't share publicly, things like university assignments or college assignments, cover letters, and that one-to-one connection between themselves and the job actually allows them to really open up in their self-marketing. And it's also built for recruiters, and it starts off with the resume, just like you're used to seeing a candidate, and you're actually able to drill down into an actual into the evidence based on if the resume has piqued your interest. So we'll include a link to a live showcase that you can go through at the end of the presentation, and feel free to jump in and go through it. As you can see here, they're able to also bring experiences to life. So if they've done workshops or they've done presentations, they're able to include pictures of it, which helps you start to experience them as a candidate and get a much deeper understanding and flavor for who they are. And we've seen this actually does a great job in helping bringing the candidate to life, and actually gets recruiters really excited about discovering the people that they could be potentially hiring. Some of the touch points that the showcase includes as the resume, cover letter, work examples, awards, certificates, video introduction, media embeds from across the internet. They can also include references and letters, online links, and more. It's really up to the student. Virtually anything they want to share with you, they can include in a showcase. So this is actually a great way to pull in additional information from the candidate. And we've also got the ability as well to group showcases into a cluster. So if you're interested in getting more students and more new grads that have this much deeper insight and deeper information about them, you can actually access one live link, which has a collection to all the different students that are interested in your particular role. It's very easy to consume, and there's zero learning curve. You actually just click the link and you jump in and you're experiencing the talent live. It's actually also very easy to share internally. So you can take the same link that you clicked and you can share it with coworkers, hiring managers, and others. And that's one of the areas that a lot of individuals with applicant tracking systems like working with the cluster very much, is they find it much easier to send to a coworker, just sending the link and ask them to check out a particular candidate. And it can work with your ATS system. So I'm gonna ask Andrew if he'd be willing to come back in now, as Springer does have a special webinar offer, as David was talking about earlier.
Sure. So just in line with the webinar, we wanted to offer just all attendees today a free job posting on dailynurse.com. And we'll be promoting these jobs to our student nursing audience. So if you had a job that was relevant to new grads or new nursing grads specifically, we're going to be building clusters for each employer that's interested in posting that job. So you can see those, really visualize those 10 to 15% of candidates who are going a step further beyond the CV and resume. So like Zane was mentioning, they offer other resources, other areas for certification, for videos, for conferences attended. And every year we at Springer attend lots of conferences. So just thinking about NSNA, the National Student Nurses Association meeting we attend each year, there are a ton of nursing leaders who sort of stand out, who apply for jobs, and who talk about what they've done in the past, as well, so you can get a better glean their competencies in terms of what they could potentially contribute to your organization. So we're happy to do that, happy to offer that. And all you have to do to get that free job and cluster is include the coupon code of KD8 in your job posting on dailynurse.com.
So this is a great opportunity, as we were saying earlier, to get great access to an incredible pool of nurses, and also give you a chance to see what it's like to experience a candidate that does go above and beyond the typical cover letter resume. And we're really hoping that you do take up that opportunity and see what it's all about. I would also now like to open it up to any questions we may have, whether that's about the process, how this all works, or any other questions you have from the presentation today.
I think we're good. I think I don't see any questions coming through, but just letting everyone know, this webinar will be recorded, so we'll share it with all of the participants after the event, a link to the presentation as well as the PDF of the presentation itself, so you can share that around and just reference that. But thank you again for joining today. David and Zane, did you have anything else to send us everyone off on?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone again for their time, and let them know we're here as a resource. If anyone has any questions at all around the talent marketing or other strategies that they could employ for getting more out of their applications, we're here to help, and they can reach us either through you at Springer or at David or Zane at KD8.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for joining today, and keep an eye out on dailynurse.com/webinars for our weekly and bi-weekly webinars coming up, covering nursing careers and really recruiting different types of nurses and specializations, and how to sort of get that edge to make sure that you're basically sourcing those hard to fill positions. Well, thanks again for joining. Take care, guys. Take care, everyone.